And thank you so much
Thank you.
for giving me the confidence to buy my first white t-shirts. So I appreciate that.
Hey, let's go, man.
Come on.
Right on.
You know what? I bought my first white t-shirts after I watched The Bear, and I went, I'm going to do it.
Hell yeah. I want to see you on that white t-shirt, man.
No, you
Rock
don't.
on.
No, you don't. Jeremy, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. It's nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you too. Congratulations on the film. I really loved it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You play Kerry Von Erich, who is known to like wrestling fans like me as the Texas Tornado, and
Yeah.
but I realized watching this film made me realize just how many people are going to see this film may not know the story of the Von Erichs, the very tragic story of the
Mm.
Von Erichs. Kerry is not with us anymore, so he can't tell his story. And you're in a situation where you have to tell his story to a lot of people who don't know him at all. How was that
Mm.
for you?
It was frightening to be honest. I had never played I had never played a real person before in anything, and I was worried for sure, you know.
You had never played a real
I mean
person
I
before. You'd never done a role where you.
no,
Wow.
and I trusted Sean, you know. I trusted Sean, and Sean had been in communication with Kevin Von Erich, who Zach plays. So I knew, you know, I had to just go, okay, like I have a right to be here, and I have a right to like give a take on this person, and you know, to be honest, like all of these brothers probably deserve their own films, but you know, this is the amount of time we were given to tell as much story as we wanted to. Um, so so yeah, it was nerve wracking, but it was nice to have Kevin's blessing. And I remember, you know, Kevin told Sean very early on what was most important to him if he's going to tell the story, if Sean is going to tell the story. It's just important that the film show um, that real like love and bond between brothers, and so we knew how important that was, and that we could like focus on that, and that could be like kind of our north star if we were sort of like doubting at any moment. As long as we were doing that, I think we were on the right path.
Jeremy, you used frightening and nerve wracking. What like
Yeah.
I've never really heard those words when it comes to this kind of thing. Like why was it scary?
I think it was scary just because, you know, you want to do justice. Like I said, I'd never played a real person before, and you need to, you know, you don't want to show up and you don't want to do like an imitation of somebody. Like there was a lot of footage that you could find of these men as they were wrestling, you know. They were wrestling and they were in the ring, and they had these kind of like larger than life personas. But then, you know, you had to do a lot of like guesswork with how these men sort of like carried themselves behind closed doors, and you know, I think I just knew that how much these men meant to not only the people, their family and friends, and people who knew them at the time, and that are still with us, but also they're so beloved by this like massive wrestling community, and so I think I just knew that there would be, you know, there would be a lot of eyes on the film, and on these brothers, and I think I just wanted to do Carrie's story and these brothers' stories justice. So it made me nervous.
I know what you mean now. Like I'm not an actor. I've never acted. So like, but I understand what you mean. To take on a fictional role is to create an invention of someone who I'm going to meet for the first
Yeah,
time. But when you take on someone
yeah,
who actually existed, you're representing them, especially if they're passed on.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think you've got a certain amount of freedom with a fictional character. You know, no one can tell you anything really about that person. It's your invention. But yeah, in playing a real person, you know, people can sort of have opinions, and you know, and their own relationship. I think the interesting thing too is like, you know, so many people, and rightfully so, even people who didn't know these men because they were public and people and performers, and they have a relationship with these people, they're fans, and they feel like they have a relationship, and so to have somebody then come along and show them, a version of this person that might not match up to the relationship that they understand that they have, I don't know, it could make them feel a certain kind of way.
Well, let me I got another kind of nerdy I don't know anything about acting, so sometimes I ask sort of nerdy acting questions. I'm very curious
Please.
about it. Okay, you got it. For one, and I'm not just blowing smoke here, I knew the Texas Tornado. I knew Kerry Von Erich through his like speeches on TV and his wrestling, but I didn't know anything about his internal life. So let me just say that like the depiction you gave was very like edifying to me. It was very like satisfying to me, and made me think really differently about this person that I had come up with. But also as a viewer, I found myself really frustrated by him. Like I saw so many different avenues where he could have. I don't want to sound discompassionate, but like there were so many avenues where I was like, oh, why don't you just do this and get better? Why don't you just do that and get better? Why don't you just do this and help yourself? Why don't you do this? And I wondered as an actor if you have to face that as well, like portraying someone who just can't see through the turmoil they're going through. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you have to be careful about when you decide you're going to take a role. You have to be very careful about passing any judgment,
Right.
on the character. I think like, yeah, maybe like in retrospect, you can look and see maybe like different paths and things like that. And, I think the film itself, and even for all the brothers, there was something about kind of like, I mean, the story itself is so unbelievable. It is, this tragedy. Like, how did so much tragedy and brutality befall this singular family?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that there were paths. There were these weird, like there was the Olympics for Carrie, and there was football for Kevin, and there seemed like possible outs maybe during the period when they were wrestling, but you also have to understand like how joyful the experience was too. I mean, I think their relationship with their father Fritz was a difficult one. But he also he put them in the position to really be like on top of the world at that time in this sport. And I think it has to be clear, like, how much these men like enjoyed that time as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I understand. I mean, I definitely have watched, film, television, all sorts of things. And I think, yeah, like wished something else for certain characters.
Yeah.
But I think when you're, approaching something, you're going to do, you try, to look at it with like as little sort of like judgment as possible. Yeah.
Well, to that, and tell me if I'm way off base here, but I wondered about the connection I saw between Kerry Von Erich in the Iron Claw, and then the character I would know you from is Carmy from The Bear, which are these two sort of hyper masculine men in very driven by masculinity industries, high pressure kitchens and wrestling, and who are grappling with what kind of man they want to be and what kind of man they can be. And I wondered if there was something that you liked about that sort of internal struggle that you get to portray in those situations. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there's definitely some similarities, it's interesting hearing someone like, calling Carmy like masculine and something. Like, I don't even, I just don't, I haven't
Come
thought
on.
about
He's sort of built that way. He doesn't show his emotions very easily.
That's true.
I like how I'm arguing with you, by the way, about this.
He's emotionally unavailable.
Yeah. Not unlike myself.
Sure. But yeah, I think you're right on with sort of like I think the parallels that I drew fairly quickly were certainly like these two industries or professions. I think demand a certain amount of time, commitment, isolation. And I think that these two men shared like a certain amount of like a obsession for sure. The thing that I tried to focus on was sort of like this idea of like losing this thing that you've become so wrapped up in. And I think both of these men had this thing where like your identity and your sense of self, and your approval and all of this stuff is coming from this one place, or the majority of it at least is coming from this one place. And you're very good at this thing, but if that becomes threatened in any way, what is left of you? I think that that was true of Carmi, especially in kind of like the first season of the show. What if he's not able to do this thing? If he loses this, what does he have? And then certainly for Carrie, I think after the motorcycle accident, he did get back in the ring amazingly,
Yeah.
and did compete for a long time after the accident. But that was also like a secret that he kept. He felt like he had to. He wasn't allowed to be vulnerable or be honest with the media or his audiences. He continued to perform and to appear strong. Yeah,
I mean, what about you, man? Like I'm not Dr. Phil here, but I was reading this
mm,
interview with you around the time The Bear came out, and
yeah,
I saw this one line from you that I didn't really understand, and I wanted to ask you about it. You said
sure.
that so that coming out of Shameless, which was this this role that really sort of made your career,
Uh-huh.
you get Carmi and The Bear, and you said, I have it written down here, that you and Carmi found each other at a similar place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I think Shameless like felt. I did that show for so long, and I loved that show, and I loved everybody I did it with. But but I don't know, when that show ended, I thought, or I put myself in this very dramatic position of like, look, either I like disappear, and like recreate myself and have to like take a break from acting or something, and then in 5 years try and do something, or I really need to do something quickly and like plant my flag in some kind of way, and say, okay, that show is done, and now this is me as an actor. That's not me. This is me. Um, and I think Carmi had come from this history of working in kind of like other people's kitchens. He was good at what he did, um, um, but I think he was, by the end, maybe feeling a little bit stuck or uninspired. And I think towards the end of Shameless, I was feeling, you know, similarly. And and then he comes to he comes back home. He comes to Chicago, and he tries to reinvent this space, this place, to inspire other people. And I think in a big way, I was, I don't know, trying to reinvent myself, or my career, or I don't know, make a new path for myself. And I think Karmi was also trying to create and find a new path for himself. And I think that's where the similarity was.
I mean, that's a beautiful thing, and it really did happen. I mean, we were just talking about this on the way in. That, I mean, again, I'm not trying to blow smoke here, but it's nice to get a chance to talk to you while everything is kind of happening. And I know there's a cost to a lot of stuff happening at once, but
Sure.
in terms of like nominations and a lot of different kinds of roles and a lot of different kinds of really what seems to be like really gratifying work, what
Yeah.
is what's something you hope to remember about this time in your acting life?
Hmm. About this time in my acting
Yeah, like
life.
10, 20 years down the road.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, I I try to stay in the present as best I can with all this stuff, and sort of like find find gratitude. I think my energy naturally is kind of so nervous and looking into the future, and sort of like what's next,
Yeah.
and so I really I don't know, I'm trying to like sit in and hang on to this feeling, which is a good feeling. I mean, it's something I've wanted for a long time, and when I say something I wanted, and what that is like, the opportunity to work with directors, like Sean, and writers, and other actors that I really admire and I think I can learn from, and to really have like some sort of like longevity in this career, and in this profession, because longevity is not promised to anybody. I don't care what kind of moment you're having or how good your year was.
Yeah.
It's like it's a very like, it's not very tangible. So so yeah, I don't know. I hope I look back and and can remember it well, and I hope I can stay present with it now, so I can think back upon it, because I think my instinct is to
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
to just rush forward.
Yeah.
You know,
Is to
yeah.
rush. Yeah. And to not be sort of present in the moment to the point where you can kind of remember how things felt. You can only be thinking about the future, which is going to come no matter what. Well,
Exactly.
I wish we had a little bit more time, but that's all. I'm so happy to get a chance to talk to you. Thank you so
me too,
much.
man.
Thank you so much for the performances in the Iron Claw and in the Bear, and thank you so much
you.
for giving me the confidence to buy my first white T-shirts. So I appreciate that.
Hey, let's go, man.
Come on,
Right on.
You know what? I bought my first white T-shirts after I watched the Bear, and I went. I'm going to do it.
Hell yeah. I want to see you on that white t-shirt, man.
No, you
Rock
don't.
on.
No, you don't. Jeremy, pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much for making the time.
Hey, of course. Be good. Nice to meet you.